Right, thank you, Ken Corley. Back in May 2015, my Leader's question with you was in relation to TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade Investment Partnership, and I outlined my concerns and the concerns of politicians and trade unions and civil society and NGOs. And the main concern was TTIP's aim to remove any regulatory barrier to profits and the profit-making potential of the multinational and transnational companies. And also in relation to the concerns around banking, agriculture, the environment, food safety, workers' rights and education. And of particular concern was the investor-state dispute settlement, which gives foreign investors the right to sue a sovereign state with a democratically elected government for a loss of profits resulting from public policy decisions. I asked for a debate. 6 months later, we got 2.5 hours in the last week of the last Dáil. And we know the Dáil was dissolved then and the aftermath. Now, the latest round of talks in TTIP began recently, and we know that President Obama wants to speed up TTIP, and that's in spite of more and more voices expressing concern, including some leading EU politicians, in spite of the fact that the protest against TTIP is gaining momentum, and in spite of the implication from Brexit, because the UK was one of the main EU supporters of TTIP. There's a worry that TTIP will erode the gains that developing countries have been making through the World Trade Organization, that it will undermine some of the sustainable development goals. Now, we know that trade policies have a role to play in eradicating poverty, but they can also contribute to further poverty and inequality. And in the meantime, we have CETA. I want to question the rush to support CETA, and the line in the spin seems to be that there are opportunities for Irish businesses and firms, but that's ignoring the concerns that people have about CETA, and those concerns are economic, financial and also constitutional. And the ISDS settlement is going to create a new legal power to make a charge on the state. Now, Article 29, Section 5.2 of the Irish Constitution says that the state has to seek the approval of the Dáil in the case of an international agreement being likely to place a charge on the state. We have an example from Egypt where the government was trying to increase the minimum wage, and they're now facing a lawsuit from a multinational company for the loss, the extra costs on them. We're facing a provisional application of CETA, and if we sign it, it will mean that the CETA agreement will come into effect in Ireland and other EU member states before the Dáil and the other parliaments in the EU have a chance to debate it or vote on it. So my question is that we don't do this without thorough investigation and clarification on the economic, financial and legal implications, and also in the interest of our constitutional integrity, because there is a real fear that CETA and TTIP will benefit global business model over local people, and this could also have an impact on our efforts here to solve the housing and homeless crisis.
Thank you, Deputy O'Sullivan. Taoiseach.
Well, international trade agreements carry with them huge opportunities. They also carry with them huge challenges. One that Deputy O'Sullivan is well aware of is the Canadian deal, and that was originally assumed that it would be a done deal and just signed by the European Commission. In fact, it has been determined to be a mixed agreement, which includes European competencies and national competencies. Therefore, the elements that are appropriate to Europe will be dealt with by them, but each government of each country will have to approve the outcome in terms of its own discussions, which will obviously cause some lengthy discussion, I would think, in some countries. In respect of TTIP, a great deal of distance to go here yet, Deputy. I think they're starting the 14th chapter now. This was originally approved to start those discussions when Ireland held the presidency of the Union back in 2013. And there were two very good teams, both from the American side and from the European side, and they began to discuss the many complex areas that are in there. It was assumed that this agreement might be concluded towards the end of this year. Personally, I doubt whether that will actually happen, Deputy O'Sullivan. I think it probably will go some distance beyond that. So, you know, it's a precondition of the negotiations that there be no dilution of standards in labour or environment or in health. Obviously, it'll be an issue that is proposed to be completed is different to the old type of dispute and the way that settlements can be arranged. So I assume that if and when they conclude the TTIP, the opportunity for a couple of million jobs either side of the Atlantic is one attraction, but certainly there are issues that need to be teased out there. I would say on this side here, on the European side, we have reading rooms here close by the government buildings. All of the information, all of the notes are on the website, online, for everybody to read and to assess and to understand and comment on. So there isn't any secrecy in any of the deliberations from the European end in respect of TTIP. That doesn't apply from the American side. They have a different view. But for us, it's all public. It's all up front. And for those who wish to involve themselves in a deeper sense, we've provided specific reading rooms for elements of the chapters that are already sort of concluded and that are currently under discussion.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Deputy O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Taoiseach. You mentioned opportunities and challenges, but there are also very, very serious and grave risks attached to all of this, and risks for our countries. I believe that we cannot provisionally apply CETA for a number of reasons. First of all, while the EU is waiting on the decision from the European Court of Justice in relation to the EU-Singapore Free Trade Agreement, and that's not expected until the end of this year or early 2017. Also because of the legal analysis that Client Earth have done, and I would urge you that we look at that, because they're finding that the proposal is in violation of EU law. Also, in light of the fact that we have one of the German political parties who are filing a lawsuit against CETA in the German Constitutional Court. So, at the Council of Ministers in October, will you indicate that we won't sign up to the provisional application of CETA? And in the meantime, can you go to the European Court of Justice for a ruling on the ISDS, as Ireland can, under the Treaty of the Functioning of the EU, Article 218(11), to clarify the legality of the investment arbitration proposals in CETA. There are massive implications for Ireland if the ISDS goes through, because corporations and multinationals can sue the state for the loss of profit and potential profits. And Taoiseach, you have agreed to the debate. I hope we don't wait 6 months for the debate on this aspect as we did for TTIP.
Taoiseach, 1 minute to conclude, please.
Thank you. Well, the Deputy is aware that the European Union has full competence in the area of trade and matters that are falling within the common commercial policy, and the EU Commission negotiates on behalf of the Union in that regard, and on the basis of specific mandates of instruction given to it from the EU Council of Ministers. Now, the TTIP proposal is one of a number of new style trade agreements, as Deputy O'Sullivan is aware, that the EU is negotiating, that not only covers tariffs and services and investments, but also includes regulatory coherence and cooperation. This would be the world's largest bilateral and trade and investment deal. The recent EU study would show that this country would gain about 1.4% in GDP from the deal. Obviously, this is not about reducing standards or about lowering standards or about increasing costs on SMEs. It is about setting down, if you like, world standards for trade for the next many years. But obviously, as I said to you, there's a great deal of distance to go in the negotiations that are still ongoing.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
I come back to you in respect of your comment about the European Court of Justice, Deputy O'Sullivan.
Thank you very much.